Thank you, Roxana. That'll probably be all right. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Monica Molina, and my sobriety date is May the 4th of 2007. My home group is the morning meditation group. We meet 7 days a week at 6:30 a.m. It is an 11-step meditation meeting. We meet in sort of Cary, sort of Raleigh, in person, and we also meet on Zoom. It is not a hybrid meeting, by the grace of God. The 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and all 12 of the traditions, we have managed to maintain 2 separate meetings that run concurrently but still operate as one cohesive home group. We still do all our service together. We share GSR and treatment rep and hotline and all of the things. So it's a true testament, I think, to the power of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 traditions. So do the kind of normal. You've told you about my home group. I have a sponsor, and I have the gift of being able to sponsor other women in this program and carry the message, which is what I was shown is what in the very beginning of the book, before the pages have numbers, talks about carrying the message and how important it is that we carry the message. And so I hope that something I say tonight, if you hear it, maybe you can see yourself in that, resonate with something you feel or something that happened, but most importantly, that you leave knowing that this program can work for you too. I grew up in North Central Massachusetts, a small town. I grew up in a middle child. I joke that I came behind by my self-pity, honestly, that middle child syndrome, always feeling like my older brother got whatever, my younger sister was the baby and all of that. But I had, in retrospect, after working the 12 steps and writing multiple inventories, I actually had a pretty good childhood. I just didn't know it at the time. It took me a little while to find the gifts and the wonderful things that had happened. At the time, I thought it was awful, the worst ever. And I had gone away to a summer camp, and I drank alcoholically from the very beginning. And for me, what that means is I drank to change the way that I felt, with a purpose, and to change the way that I felt. And I came back from the summer camp, and I was probably 12, and we had these travel-sized bottles of mouthwash. And I had heard about my grandfather who was an alcoholic. I saw him die of alcoholism, heard my mom's stories about his alcoholism. And I remember thinking with this little, mine and my best friend's 2 bottles are nips of mouthwash, that they had alcohol in them, and it could change the way that I felt, but I wasn't going to be like my grandfather, because I knew something that he didn't, I thought, in my 12-year-old wisdom, that my problems would come back, but maybe I could just feel better now. Maybe if I could just feel better right now, it'll make it easier to deal with going home, because home was not a place that I enjoyed very much during that time. So I did not get drunk on 2 small bottles of mouthwash, but that feeling that I'm gonna try to control this, I'm gonna try to change the way that I felt, continued on through until I was in high school, and I finally got to the party, and they were pouring these big glasses of vodka, and they were throwing a little orange juice, splash a little orange juice in it, calling it a screwdriver. And what I remember about that night, a couple of things. The first was the fear that I wasn't going to be accepted, that, they weren't going to think I was cool enough. And I remember going in the bathroom and dumping some out in the toilet because I wanted them to think that I had drank more than I actually had. And then after I did get a few sips in me, and that warm feeling of release and, and peace, that everything was finally going to be okay. That this world wasn't going to swallow me whole, that I didn't have to kill myself. That I didn't have to keep hurting myself. Everything was okay now. And then I got the feeling that I was afraid that there wouldn't be enough. And I started drinking as fast as I could, as much as I could. And I know I got really, really drunk that night. I know that I fell asleep in a room full of people. We all just kind of passed out on the floor, and that I walked home the next day. And I don't have any conscious thoughts of ooh, I can't wait to do that again or anything like that. I just know that the facts are that shortly after that I had, at least one incident of asking somebody to bring me alcohol to school so that I could get through band. I don't know why I was so, things were a little crazy at home. It was like the late 80s, early 90s. My parents were super young when they had me, so they were trying to figure all, their stuff out. And I just remember being super depressed all the time. So I have this incident where I'm drinking at school, and I just realized that as long as I could get a hold of this, that's all I needed to do. Everything was going to be okay. So I got a job really young. I was making money. I could pretty easily get what I want, and so that's what I did. I drank as much as I could, as fast as I could, as often as I could, and that's how I made it through high school. I graduated high school. I managed to go to, I decided I was going to go to New York City and be an actress. That was my dream. I was going to go act. And I was 18 years old. I had no family in New York. I was there all by myself. I was living in Manhattan. I was this was the coolest thing that could have possibly ever happened to me, that I was living in Manhattan. And I could just go to the corner store and buy a 40 when I got off of work. Or I could go to the bar and sit at the bar and order a beer at 18 years old. And because they didn't care. They weren't asking for ID or anything like that. And so now I had this feeling that I would, identify for many years of I'm an adult now. I'm doing adult things. This is my right. I'm working full time. I'm going to school full time. I'm paying for this all on my own. And, also student loans. But this was now my right. I was going to drink because it was my God-given right to feel better. I should feel good all the time. That is my right. And so that's what I did. And I drank through college. And I graduated, but I went to upstate New York and I did a show. And it was a mess. And I have a newspaper clipping to prove that it was a mess. And I was a mess. And up there was the first time I really had consequences associated with my drinking. And I went home with someone I didn't belong going home with, and, and I hurt people, and there was a lot of anger and a lot of bitterness. And, I had to leave the house where we were all staying. I was no longer welcome there. And that was the first time I had ever really had a consequence, that up until then it was just fun. And I didn't realize that these epic depressions that I would have between drinks, that I was drinking to get rid of those. It didn't occur. This had become my way of life. And the epic depressions between drinks were just, the problem. And as long as I could go to work and make money and drink, everything was fine. I went back to Massachusetts after that because I realized I liked money and eating. And those were two things that were not frequently happening together, and trying to be an actor. It wasn't going very well. So I go back to Massachusetts. I'm regrouping. I'm like, all right, I'm going to figure out my life. I'm going to figure out what I need to do. And I had a plan. And his name was Andrew. And I met a guy. And so we moved in together. And we were playing house, and it was wonderful, or so I thought. I thought it was wonderful. He was not having a good time because I was drinking every day, and he didn't understand that. And I'd never had really a boyfriend. High school was I was just drinking. I was having a good time. I was partying. So boyfriends, dating, that was just that wasn't my jam. So this was the first time somebody was around me long enough and paying attention. I do genuinely believe this man loved me. And he saw that I couldn't make it through a day. Life was too unbearable until I had a couple of drinks to take the edge off. But I could never just stay there. The edge would come off and then the wheels would come off. I couldn't just stay in that nice, comfortable, happy place. And I would immediately get into fights with him about, where I was going, who I was with, or, why I couldn't wait till he got home or whatever. And, we were young. We were 21, 22 at the time. And so he was I don't need to, I'm out of here. There's life to live out there. And I was devastated. I had no tools, or skills to deal with the kind of pain that happens when you think that you're going to marry someone and then you don't, and then they're gone. I didn't know, I had no frame of reference for dealing with that. And so I drank, and I just kept drinking, and I kept, doing things to shove down all of the pain. And that just became really unmanageable. I stopped being able to go to work when I was supposed to be there. I was taking every Monday off, and I didn't realize that was, my pattern. I wasn't aware of a pattern. But I started having really scary self-harming things happen, and that I was doing. And so I went to see a doctor. And thank God for the cooperation with the professional community and our public information committees in AA, because I don't know that she ever was an alcoholic or knew an alcoholic, but she knew about AA, and she knew after sizing me up pretty quickly that there was something going on with my drinking. And after telling her my sad story, and her suggesting that I might want to consider checking out AA, I thought perhaps I should start with Al-Anon, because I was convinced that it was my family and all of the drama that surrounded my childhood that was really the problem. She disagreed, and she said, "You've hurt those people. The Al-Anons don't want to hear from you right now." And I don't know. So I went to AA, and so I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in 2002. I don't remember a whole lot. And this could have been my first meeting. It could have been my fifth. I don't know, but I remember showing up in a parking lot really early in the morning before I was going to go to work, and not sure where I was supposed to go. And somebody saying, "Are you a friend of Bill?" And I was like, "I don't know who Bill is." And they were like, "Good, come with me." They just knew, you can just see this you're in the right place. And they took care of me, and they brought me in, they got me coffee, and they were really, really kind. And I would go to that meeting before I would go to work sometimes. And sometimes I would cry, and I can't imagine the things that came out of my mouth at that meeting, because I was still drinking. I wasn't, I hadn't made the connection between the string of bad luck I was having and, alcohol. And so that was 2002. In 2004, I went to England for 10 days. And I sat in a hostel for 10 days and just drank. I left one day to go take a bunch of pictures so that it looked like I had done something, got the Buckingham, got the, whatever. But I just drank. That's all I did for 10 days. And when I got back to Massachusetts, this is the insanity of alcoholism. I went to the senior leader in my department, and I told her that I just knew that I was supposed to relocate to London and work there, because I had never been happier than that 10 days that I was there. And it didn't occur to me until I had gotten sober and reflected on that, what had happened. And later that day, I got taken to the hospital because they thought I was having a heart attack. I was I was just a mess because of drinking and using some other substances when I got back. And I still, they came down with the pamphlet. They said, "We really think that you should try a detox. You have multiple substance abuse diagnosis. We really think you should get some help." And I couldn't make that connection in my brain. I was like, "No, I don't. I think I'm gonna be all right. I got a good job. I'm in school. I think this is gonna be okay." So I just kept going. Bless you. And about a year later, I got arrested. I had tried a bunch of stuff to try to fix my life. None of them related to not drinking alcohol. I had joined a church because I was convinced that was, if I could just leave it at Jesus' feet, that was going to solve all my problems. And I hit the jackpot with churches. These people were really good people. They knew what was going on with me, and they never, they loved me anyway. And I went back to college because I thought if I got a degree, that was, that would complete me. I would be a successful functioning adult if I went back to college. And I just found more people that drank like I drank and did, other things. And so here it is, it's 2005. I'm in a car, under the influence and smoke is billowing out the windows, and the police officer comes and arrests me. And I have this moment where I'm like, I've been going to AA, and I think that this might be what they're talking about with the problem. Like this seems like a problem, because at this time, like I teach Bible classes. I have left children at camps with other adults that I'm supposed to be caring for so that I can go drink. I am like, I've got all these, like, the outside, the outside's looking real good. To this day, there are people that tell me they had no idea that I was living this way, living the way I was living. So I went, and the jig was kind of up because a few of my wonderful church members also had police scanners and were aware that I had gotten arrested the night before. And so the jig was up. Story was out there. I could now just tell people, like, yeah, I got a problem. Like, I'm a mess. I'm a mess. And now it was just an open mess. And I remember going to my original therapist had referred me to another woman, and I remember distinctly seeing the big book leaning up against her chair when I walked into her office. And I remember her saying, we were talking about what was going on with me, and her asking me, something. I don't remember what she said, but I remember saying very clearly, I remember telling her that I get it now, that I know that I have a problem with alcohol. So I'm never going to drink again. That's my solution. I am never going to drink again. And in that moment, when I swore off alcohol, I was 100% convinced that I was never going to drink again. And so, like, when I read in Bill's story, when he says, like, I woke up, I saw this had to be stopped, I knew I couldn't take, one drink, and then he goes and drinks again, man, that resonates so strong with me, because it was about a month and a half. It was around Thanksgiving again, and I drank, and I remember sitting in this attic with these friends with this beer and thinking, like, I really thought I was never going to drink again. Like, I believed that, and now I'm drinking again. And just that feeling of like, this is that powerlessness. Like, I can't stop drinking. And so I kept drinking. I started going to more AA. It's 2006 now. Like, I've been going to AA for 4 years. There are hot dog meetings in Massachusetts. Like, it's good AA. And there's good places that, people were kind and friendly and, like, really welcoming me back. And so I liked it. I liked going. And but I never got a sponsor. I never worked the 12 steps. I'm not saying they weren't doing those things. I'm just saying I wasn't doing those things. And I managed to put like almost a whole year between two drinks once. And it was 2007, and I was like miserable, just ugh. And I blew a red light. I got pulled over. I wasn't drinking. I hadn't been drinking. He let me go. I didn't even get a ticket. And I was like, screw this. And I went, to a house, and I ended up getting drunk. And for about 6 weeks, I would go to a meeting and I would pick up a chip. I'd be like, today's going to be the day. And then I would drink again. And I'd go to a meeting and I'd pick up, today's going to be the day. I even went on a treatment center commitment one time with a group, and one of the guys was like, when are you going to realize you just can't drink? And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Today's the day. Today's going to be the day. And so on May 3rd, I called this woman. I'd asked her to be my sponsor. And I had called her. I'd been calling her. I was like, this is it, Joan. Tonight's the night. I know tonight's the night. I'm going to do it tonight. I'm going to stay sober tonight. And as I'm having this conversation with her, I'm walking up the stairs into an apartment where all of my booze and drugs is from the night before. Like, it's there in the house. And I'm walking up, and I honestly believe that I'm going to walk in this house with all this booze, and I'm not going to drink. I'm thinking that's what's going to happen. And that's what I consider the inability to separate the true from the false. Like I couldn't comprehend that I had no power to walk into a house full of alcohol and not drink. I just couldn't comprehend that. So I tell Joan I'm going to stay sober another day, and I get off the phone, and you can all imagine what happens next. And so the next day, I called Joan up again, and I'm like, oh, Joan, you're not going to believe this. It happened again. It's crazy. And she says, well, I won't pretend that I know what she said. Like, I was a mess. But I will tell you what I heard, what I remember, and what I believe altered the course of my life. She said something like, you don't have to call me if you like. Don't feel obligated to keep calling me because you can call me if you want to, but you don't have to. Because I was feeling bad, and she's like, "Why are you putting yourself through this?" But she said something like, maybe you're just not done. Like maybe you're just not done drinking. You just gotta finish drinking, and one day you'll be done. But it doesn't sound like you're done. And I remember this feeling of hopelessness. Like in my mind, AA just told me that I might as well just go drink. And if AA's not going to try to stop you from drinking, then, what do you got left? And I remember that, like, standing outside of my office and just feeling like I was going to die. I knew, in that moment, I thought, I have no idea how not to drink. But I know that if I keep drinking the way I'm drinking, I'm going to die. So I guess I'm just going to die. And it was the worst day of my life. It was the absolute worst day of my life. And not entirely just because I didn't drink that day. It was a pretty bad day because of this idea that, like, I was just going to die. I was going to die a drunk. And I asked this girl that I knew for my church, actually. I asked her to come and stay with me. I did not feel comfortable staying alone. I knew I was going to drink that night if I stayed by myself. So she came over, and we got on our knees. And this is just my experience. This is just what happened for me. I got on my knees and I said, God, please remove from me the obsession and the desire for alcohol and drugs. Please remove the obsession and desire for alcohol and drugs. I don't know how that works. All I know is that there was a day that I wanted to drink more than anything else in this world, that I could not handle life. And then there was a day that I didn't. And I have no idea how that happened. That's what I call my higher power. That's what I call the creator of the universe. And that is a power that is beyond greater than myself. Because I don't know how that happened. But it did. And 10 days later, I was in North Carolina looking for a place to live. My company had decided that they were going to relocate me here. At first it was like, the South, because I was born and raised in Massachusetts. I had no idea what it was like here. I had no idea that it was going to be the amazing place that it is for me. The only experience I had with the South was the hills of Tennessee. It's very different than that. Very different. RTP and Johnson City, Tennessee. It's a very different place. So I was pleasantly surprised when I got here. And yeah, anyway. So 10 days later, I'm here. I'm looking for a place to live. I'm super uncomfortable. I've got 10 days sober. I'm jittery. And some guy had called me and said, like, I just heard this lady tell her story. She's from Raleigh, and she was, this was up in Massachusetts. Said she's from Raleigh, but she was up here in Gardner. She's telling her story. I think you should call her. And, so I called her. And in those, like in the very, very beginning, I don't know why I did half the stuff that I did. Like, people would tell me to do something and I would do it. I was so miserable and so uncomfortable. I just don't remember having questions. I don't remember wondering why people were asking me to do the things that they were, or telling me to do the things they were telling me to do. Maybe I did. Maybe I was a real pain in the ass. I don't know. But what I remember is, like, he said, call this lady. She lives in Raleigh. I called her up. I didn't know what to say. She did. So she said, okay, well, next time you're in Raleigh, let me know. I'll come pick you up. And I said, okay. And so for 3 months, every time I would come into Raleigh for work to get the office set up and to get the recruiting things and whatever, she would pick me up. And at least once I remember I pulled up to the hotel. She pulled up right next to me. I just got into her car, and I'll deal with the hotel later. We went straight to a meeting. And that's what the first 90 days of my sobriety were like. It was just, going to meetings every possible chance that I could get, in the morning and in the afternoon, every meeting I could get to, during that back and forth, because it was really, really uncomfortable. I was having to do things. I was having to be in meetings and talk to people and do things that were so uncomfortable, without, having that protective layer between me and all of them. And at 90 days sober, I moved into my little beautiful condominium in Cary, because I was told that was the right place for me to be for the beginning of, my time here in North Carolina. I know it's kind of a joke, but I'll tell you, I think it's a good transitionary location for somebody that's coming from the north and getting used to a different way of life. And I lived probably 10 minutes from the Alano Club, and I couldn't sleep. And I was crazy, and I was uncomfortable in my skin, and so I went to the Alano Club at 6 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of the people that were there at that time had been sober for a good long time, and they taught me things. They would tell me, like, go to the bathroom before the meeting starts, okay, so you don't have to get up and walk around. They were sweet and they were kind, and I was probably like 9 months sober, 10 months sober, and they, we had been going to these treatment center meetings together. Like, they would take me with them, and I would go into Holly Hill Hospital or ATC, and we would carry a message. I didn't care. I didn't have much of a message. I was listening most of the time, and they said, well, now you're going to go and you're going to get us the meeting. So your job is, like, once a month, you go up and you get the meeting so that we know where we're supposed to be. So I had this, like, job, this responsibility. And this was how I got introduced to service in AA. And it was a real game changer for me. Like, I had already, gotten in the middle of this group of people that were so serious about their recovery that they would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to a meeting. And, now they've given me this opportunity to be of service. So I go up, I'm like 9 months sober. I start getting them, I do this every month. I go up and I get the meeting, and I take it back, and we go to the treatment center. And about like 3 months into it, this guy says, he's the one that's like chairing the group, and he says, I can't do this anymore. I'm moving. Will somebody do this? Will somebody take on this chairperson responsibility? And I definitely was not volunteering. But nobody else was either. Like, nobody wanted to do this. And so after like a couple, it was like a couple months. I'd been sober for I think 14 months or something. I was very new still. He was like, well, I'm not going to be here next month, so somebody's got to do this. And I was like, well, I guess I can do it. I have I don't know what I'm stepping up for. I didn't understand the concept of general service and the intergroup office, the districts. I don't know anything about that. So he says, all right, go to the intergroup office next month, be there this time. They'll tell you everything. They'll show you how it works. I got there and I found out it was a 2-year sobriety requirement to be a chairperson of the treatment facilities committee for the intergroup. And so there's this group of guys that have all been sober God knows how long. And they're like, what are you doing here? Like, you haven't been around long enough. And so they sent me out of the room, and they took a vote, and they decided that I could stay. And so they let me stay on as a steering committee member for this intergroup office. And I think of that today, and I share that with you because the opportunity to give back to Alcoholics Anonymous in any small way is such a gift for me, because I have no idea how this all happened. Like, I am so blessed to have been, somebody that was able to find this program and to have this, spiritual experience that I've gotten here. I would love to tell you that was like, everything from there was smooth sailing, and I was just tiptoeing through the tulips. But that wasn't my experience. I've had a few challenging times in AA. I remember at one point asking my sponsor, well, once you've worked the 12 steps, what do you do after that? And I can tell you there has never been a shortage of opportunities for me to practice the 12 steps in my life in some area. I don't think I've had a single season of my life, that I wasn't gifted with some circumstance that was a growth opportunity, that the steps would not help. And that has included illness, cancer, people dying. My mom passed away. That has involved getting married, which I never thought that would happen. But that happened, and staying married, that's also very, and and what that has actually, what I'll talk about there is that the latter 4 chapters of the book, my experience in sponsoring women is that oftentimes once we get through working with others, they're off working with others, and somehow the time just dwindles away from, to wives and the family afterward, and vision for you. And while I like you probably hear at meetings, I also have, some challenges with some of the language, whatever, how, like the patriarchal type stuff that's in there. I'm not going to waste anybody's time talking about that tonight. But what I am going to share with you is that practicing the principles in my affairs required that I have affairs, and required that I be willing to sit with the discomfort that comes with being a participant in those affairs. And, there was a time where I was absolutely hiding out in AA. Like, I was just getting up 3-4 meetings a day, sponsoring, all kinds of women, service position at my home group, intergroup, and generals. Like, I was just in the middle, and I realized that it was because I did not want to deal with the discomfort of showing up in relationships with other people, because then I wouldn't always get my way. And then if I didn't always get my way, like, I'd be uncomfortable, and I didn't like that very much. And so a lot of the last few, 5 or 6 years of my recovery has been about learning how to be in relationship with other people, with my husband, and my family, and not always get my way, and be okay with that. And AA, right? Like the patriarchal thing with, to wives, like, I can still be here, and I get a gift from that chapter, and I grow spiritually every time I read it, even though there might be a thing or a word or a concept or whatever that, I might have phrased differently had I been consulted 80 years ago. But I can joke about that today, because I don't have to take myself so seriously. I can have my own experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I can have my own, beliefs and thoughts and feelings, but I can still put the unity of this program above everything else. The pandemic was hard on a lot of us. I know that. The home group that I was in at the time, it was a very difficult time, with the different feelings and thoughts about masks, no masks, indoors, outdoors, meeting at all, not meeting at all, Zoom, no Zoom. And it was a very, very difficult time. And, I think that no time was it more clear how important the principles of the program are, the traditions of unity. And I got a phone call, and they said, hey, we started this Zoom meeting back with the old MMG crew before there was anywhere for them to go. So everybody was going. The first day I jumped on the call, was 109 people there. It was insane. I was like, how is this isn't sustainable. But they had a whole process, they had a whole thing, and I realized that the people that were there when I first got sober, like my very beginning days, one of them was down in Jekyll Island, one of them was in Michigan. They were all over the place, and now all of a sudden they were here again, and we were together again, and it was like, it was very moving. So what my life is like today, I like to think that I have a relatively balanced life today. I talked to my sponsor before I came out here today. We do a 10-step inventory, make sure I'm, recognizing when I'm stomping around in other people's lives. I we had an inventory where I found that there was something missing from my spiritual practice. So I built a little something extra into my spiritual practice. So now I get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock to implement, that. And it's, and yeah, that's like not always convenient, maybe, but it reminds me of like the strenuous work, that I get to do in this program. It's not recreational, it's strenuous. I couldn't have imagined the life that I get to live today. Like I had, I would hear people say that when I first came in. I got a life second to none. If I wrote all the things that I thought I wanted for my life, I would have sold myself short. That was something that they used to say a lot I would hear a lot when I first came in. But my sponsor had me write out when I was looking for a job and couldn't find a job, and I was, all depressed about my value as a human and my place in this world. She had me write out, a couple of principles, a couple of beliefs, and put it on my fridge, and it was there, and I'd forgotten all about it. And I recently got this like amazing job that I love so much and I'm just wild about. And I was cooking breakfast and I looked over and there's that piece of paper, that just already had on it the thing that was going to happen. And I had written that like 6 months ago or 8 months ago. And that is, I don't know why the things work the way it does. But I do know that if I continue to do the things today that I did yesterday, I got a pretty good chance of staying sober. And not just sober, if drinking was my problem, then not drinking would have been the only solution I needed. And it's not. Like there was so much more that I uncovered when I got here and when I used the process of the 12 steps. And so God willing, I stay sober for the rest of my life. I'm just going to keep doing that, and I think I'll be okay. So I hope that's all I got.